please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And please let the record note that with the exception of Ms. Bentley, all council members are present this evening. We've got minutes from the meeting of March 27th. Without objection, they'll be approved. Seeing none, we will move on to our schedule of committee meetings. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks. City Council committee meetings are being held this Wednesday, the 5th of April, and Parks and Conservation will start the morning at 9:05 and go till 9:35. Land Use and Planning will meet from 9:40 to 9:55. Public Works Committee will meet from 10 a.m. to 11:10 a.m. Committee of the Whole will meet from 11:15 to 11:35. And then again at noon until 2 o'clock. That noon till 2 o'clock meeting is going to be held up at the University of Montana in the UC Center. It's a meeting with U of M. And following that, the Budget Committee will meet from 2:30 to 3:40. Administration and Finance will meet from 3:45 to 4 o'clock. So all of the meetings are being held here in the City Council chambers at 140 West Pine, except for the meeting with the University, which is the 12 to 2 one, and that's being held up at the University Center. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any changes to the committee schedule this evening? Seeing none, for the record, Ms. Bentley is here. We'll move on then to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening. Any general public comment?
Candy Matthew Jenkins, 1211 Cooper Street. I'm still reading out of The Soviet Art of Brainwashing, Psychopolitics, The Art of Mental Healing. And I want to just express, I gave a testimony on my freedom of speech, and I was corrected. The officer that was standing in the back was not called on my behalf. So I'm thankful for that. This was read into the Congressional Record of Un-American Activities, the Psychopolitics, and between 1936 and 1939. The behavior of children is regulated in this fashion in every civilized country. The father, finding himself unable to bring about the immediate obedience and training on the part of his child, resorts to physical violence, and after administering punishment of a physical nature to the child on several occasions, is grateful to experience complete obedience on the part of the child each time the father speaks. In that the parents are wont to be lenient with their children, they seldom administer sufficient punishment to bring about optimum obedience. And I'm going to stop there because I noticed something on this breaking the cycle of abuse, about child abuse. They neglected to mention that between July and January of 2016, 2017, that 14 children died while in care or by their parents. And I thought that was not right that they didn't mention that. And then we had our Democrat legislators wanting to, well, assuming that the Muslim faith of Sharia law was being prejudiced against in the legislature. And I just want to inform you people that these people don't like us, and their faith doesn't like us. I pulled a picture off the internet of what they do to homosexuals.
And that's
They
3
throw
minutes, Ms. Matthew
them
Jenkins.
off of buildings. And why we want them here, I don't know.
Any other general public comment this evening? Sir.
I'm Craig Rail. I live at 418 Edith, and I wasn't going to say anything about this, but I've had this wacky idea for quite a while. I live in the slant streets, and I know that when I drive around the slant streets, I almost half the time I have to turn right to get onto Stevens. And we have a place that we rent out over on the other side of the slant streets, and as a builder, I thought it would be a great idea to those streets where you can't cross Stevens Avenue, just abandon those streets and allow them to be turned into house lots. And I thought about the dynamics of that, the fact that the city would abandon a lot and give somebody another lot that's worth, I don't know, $70,000 starts to provide plenty of grease to make the idea happen. There are sewers that run mostly through the alleys, sewers and gas lines. So the logistics of allowing that to happen would be possible. And again, as a builder, thinking about how much of a problem would it be to have one of those lots and to build something on one of those lots. It would allow for, I don't know, what are there, 5 streets, there's Woodford and Edith and Stevens and Longstaff and Cleveland. I hope I'm not missing anyone. I don't insult anybody. But there's 5 or 6 streets in there, so you would be looking at, I don't know, 30 or 40 new city lots. And some people would hang on to the lot and just have a big yard, and some people would want to sell it. And it seems like a way to find quite a bit of property for housing in the city. So I've always thought, is this a really wacky idea? But I thought, well, I don't know. If somebody gave me a lot worth $70,000, I'd probably figure out how to do something with it. And I'd either make money off of it or I'd just have more grass. So I don't see why they're crucial to the operation of that part of town. I don't feel like our roads are so busy that we can't, that if basically Edith turned into more of it was less of a feeder onto Orange, Stevens, that it wouldn't create a big traffic problem either. So I kind of thought it around in my head mostly when I don't have anything else to do and I'm driving around town. But I do think it's a good idea, and I hope maybe someday the city does that.
Thank you, sir. Other general public comment this evening? Mr. McMillan.
It's been a while. Gave you guys a break. Turning back the clock one more time for the firearms ordinance. In late January, Mr. von Lossberg admitted that the
Mark,
attorney...
would you let folks know who you are, please?
Sorry.
Thanks.
We usually do that, but it's been a while. Mark McMillan, Ward 6. Revisiting the firearm ordinance. In late January, Mr. von Lossberg admitted that the Attorney General's opinion was expected and knew this at, quote, the get-go. Does anyone, including those on council, feel lied to or misled? How many of your constituents were duped into showing up for this at their own expense? Collectively, the public on both sides of the issue spent incalculable hours traveling to and from council and committee meetings, hours waiting to speak. Some even spoke for an hour or more in 3-minute increments. Early on, I spent hours researching and talking to the FFLs in our area and in states that had laws like the one proposed, and then handed that information to Mr. von Lossberg. Now I know why he didn't do it himself. He knew the futility of the effort. I know now that he was acting dumb as a fox when he said he didn't know what I meant by viable FFLs. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But this isn't about me or my time. Let's talk about everyone who participated in this, spanning 3 calendar years. Mr. von Lossberg said early on that this would save lives. Everyone should know that driving, especially in Montana, is actually one of the most dangerous things you can do. Hundreds travel to meetings and public hearings, some from far away in the winter and at night, all based on what is essentially a lie. While council and the public spent time on a predicted failure, what was neglected? The public hearing and vote on 9/26/16, Ms. Jones stated this ordinance has taken a lot of attention from City Council and that one of Council's primary objectives is safety. Ms. Kerr cited Council's financial responsibilities and that she ran for Council for urban planning and to improve roads. On March 5, a Nissan Murano hit a pothole on 14th Street that had a loose patch. The patch and smaller debris was launched towards the sidewalk, and the rear wheel torn partially away from the suspension. The impact was so violent, it deployed the side curtain airbag, and the damage to the suspension redirected the car up over the curb and towards the sidewalk. Police were called to the scene because I assume the passenger was injured in this. If public safety is truly a concern to the council, let's take care of our infrastructure before it doesn't take care of us. Not waste time and tax dollars holding hearings and opening us up for lawsuits based on dishonest hopes and promises. I'd like to thank those who voted no, and again Ms. Hedall for making the comment that efforts to educate people about buying and selling guns is a more responsible and effective approach than an ordinance. I couldn't agree more. That would be an intelligent, effective, simple, and honest effort. Education will always produce better results than coercion. How many school lunches, bed nights, and meals at the POV and volunteer hours of honest and attainable goals did this equate to? Has this cost the city attorney's office any credibility? There's a trust and transparency issue that I now see that has me concerned. Should Mr. von Lossberg not run for council again or not be re-elected, I fear that he may have a well-paid position already waiting for him at Mountain Water. When it comes to the business of the three necessities of life, water, food, and shelter, we cannot leave out honesty and transparency. If we all get fooled twice, shame on all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Further general public comment this evening? Mr. Moore?
I read an article in the paper, number of homeless and at-risk youths rose in 2016. One survey was down. However, the news wasn't all good. The number of homeless and at-risk children in the Missoula County Public Schools, county schools, increased by 45.9%. But don't be concerned about these people. Just make sure they can pay their taxes so we can give it to the well-to-do businessmen, developers, and so forth. Report for the week, crime. March 23rd, March 30. 3 burglaries, 13 thefts from vehicles, criminal mischief, 17, 16 thefts. Solution to that might be doubling the police force. Maybe Stockman Bank will give that $1.5 million back and let us hire more policemen to stop this kind of stuff in our city. I too, like the other lady, had read this cycle of abuse. The numbers tell a story of rising horror. 2015, there were more than 2,700 children in foster care in Montana State. Last year, the number increased to more than 3,000, the highest ever. Now there are more than 3,400 children in foster care in Montana. This disturbing increase has been matched in Missoula. Now, I guess the main thing, I had asked the mayor at the last meeting, just asked, to give us a report on how much TIF funds had poured back into the general fund. I think you were making a statement that they were going to pour in at some time. So I would still like to have that report to the city. It's not a difficult report. I suspect the MRA's already got the report and could look at a computer run and tell right now. In fact, I think she's here now. She could tell us how much money of TIF has actually come back into the general fund that pays for things like schools and police and so forth. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we're taking money to build the Southgate Mall, Stockman Bank, facade on a casino, and on and on and on and on. I'd like to know how much you say is coming back into the general fund to pay for police, schools, Things like most cities pay for. Thank you.
Any other general public comment this evening? Sir.
Hello, Ken Cook, Ward 2. I'd like to thank City Council for considering the divestment from Wells Fargo.
Sir, we're going to actually do that in a moment.
And I'd like to also urge the City Council to consider further divestment from all financial institutions investing.
Sir, what I meant by that is we're actually going to consider that and take comment on that item in a little bit.
Well, this would actually be a little different. To further divest from any financial institutions.
Well, divestment is going to be the part of that topic.
That would be the Wells Fargo, right?
Yeah, we'll let you talk about it
Okay.
at that point.
Okay.
Yep.
And then also, we're still waiting for a response from the city for a request to the public records for a listing of all the financial institutions that the city does banking with and such. It's been like about 4 weeks. They said it'd be like 10 days or 2 weeks. So if anybody can kind of get that going a little bit. And then also, I'd urge the City Council to consider to review the chemicals lists that are sprayed on the public parks and easements in the city. And after review, maybe consider decreasing or ending their use in the city, as you know, they're hazardous to the children, animals, wildlife, and our watersheds and aquifers. And yeah, just so the Wells Fargo is great, and there's other banks that are funding the Devil Pipeline. I just urge maybe considering divesting from all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other general public comment this evening? All right. With that, we will move on to our consent agenda.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mr. DeCoo.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was a little slow off the mark. I was here before. My name is Bill DeCoo. I live at 1139 Poplar Street. I moved to Missoula in '73. I was landlord for 39 years. I'd like to talk to you about my experience as a landlord. The city was an obstacle. Not too bad before 97. Well, actually 99. To put this in context, in April 2002, 5 years ago, I ended up in the psychiatric ward at St. Pat's for 5 days. I had a perfect storm of stress. My rental properties and the difficulty with dealing with the city with those problems were not the only factors, but were significant factors. The psychiatrist said you might think about selling the rental properties. They seem to be the source of some of your stress. I sold 2 in 2012. 1 in 2015, 3 in 2016, the last one selling on October 31st. In my November visit to the psychiatrist, he stated, moderate to severe depression in full remission. Perhaps that's not a coincidence. Problems that occurred prior to the current administration have no reflection on the current administration. However, they're still relevant because the history of problems I had and the problems other businesses have had over the years contribute to an atmosphere in which many businesses believe the city to be unfriendly to business. That is significant. I didn't have much in the way of problems with the city until '99. I had a fourplex built in '99, and there were quite some problems with permitting. Apparently, planning claims they called either the general contractor or me about a glitch. And we never received a call. It delayed the permit 3 weeks. Interest rates went up in the interim. It cost me $5,000. Well, it got built. People moved in November of '99. And within a week or two, there were complaints about a large bang when they turned off the water. Investigation found there was no expansion tank for the boiler. I wonder how that happened. It had a plumbing inspection. About 3 years later, the boiler failed, as well as the water heater, presumably due to the excess pressure resulting from the water hammer because it was an expansion tank. The lack of an expansion tank voided the warranty. That cost me $5,000. About About 10 years later, the second boiler failed. The property manager said, we'll get another one right away. I said, let's get an engineer first. All 10 zone valves were installed backwards, and the boiler, if only one zone came on at a time to demand heat, the boiler overheated because it couldn't relieve the heat fast enough, which put extra stress on the boiler and presumably led to its failure. The engineer put in an oversized circulating pump and a flow diversion valve. That cost me another $5,000 to $6,000. In 2014? No, it was before that, 13 or 12. One of the tenants complained about water in the overhead light fixtures in the upstairs. What? What's that? Well, we looked in the attic. Water running down the inside of the top of the roof and frost from condensation in the winter. Where's that coming from? Well, we finally decided to look down in the crawl space, and the area where the boiler is had a concrete pad there which had been flooded because the boiler had failed. All the hot air and water vapor was going up to the attic where it condensed. Well, we fixed the boiler. I tried selling it, and I was within 10 days of closing when they discovered a mold problem in the attic. That cost me $18,000 to remediate. As far as I'm concerned, the negligence or incompetence of the city's plumbing inspector cost me $30,000. That might just as well be a tax. It's in the past, it's done. We can't change it. But it is part of the history. There were a few other things with the property as well, but that was the major thing. I didn't know exactly what the procedure was with a new building regarding getting a license. New licenses came up in February. I decided, well, it'll take care of itself, and I got a letter about how I had to get a license or it'd be turned over to the city attorney's office. So I went down to City Hall and to the treasurer's office, and they wouldn't give me a license application. And what the hell was I supposed to do?
So, Mr. DeCoux, we're at about 5 minutes tonight.
Okay, then I'll come back to the rest. There's more.
And Bill, you're welcome to come see me and tell me about this stuff, too. Welcome to come see me, and we can talk about this.
I have in the past, and when I brought it to your attention, you corrected them. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. DeCoux. Any other general comment this evening? All right. With that, we will move on to our consent agenda. And items on that agenda were approved unanimously in City Council standing committees. We save a little time on Monday evenings by considering these items all together. Ms. Rabine will read the list of consent agenda items aloud, so those in the audience and those at home will know what we're considering, and we'll take comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine.
Thank you. The consent agenda, microphone does not want to cooperate tonight. Consent agenda has 8 items, and the first is to approve claims, which are the city's accounts payable, in the amount of $1,537,216.91 for checks that are dated tomorrow, April 4th, 2017. Number 2 is to approve claims related to the water acquisition in the amount of $201,223.85 for checks that are also dated April 4th, 2017. Number 3 is to adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council directing the city administration to divest the city's current monetary accounts from Wells Fargo. Number 4, is to award the bid for the purchase of a graphite furnace atomic absorption spectrophotometry system. Easy for me to say. Spectrophotometry system to Perkin Elmer Health Science of Shelton, Connecticut, for a sum of $48,497.82 and authorize the return of bid bonds. And if anybody's wondering what that does, it detects metal in at our wastewater treatment plant. So that's a layman's definition of what that equipment does. Number 5 is to confirm the mayor's appointment of Anna Margaret Goldman to fill a vacated term in the Missoula Urban Transportation District Board, begins immediately and expires on December 31st of 2018. Number 6 is to adopt a resolution of the City Council to update the authorized signers on all of the City of Missoula bank accounts, enabling current city staff to sign checks, drafts, and other withdrawal orders, to remove retired or former employees from the list of authorized signature signers, to authorize the Finance Department personnel to deposit and transfer funds between City of Missoula bank and investment accounts, and entitling all banks holding City of Missoula accounts to honor facsimile signatures. Number 7 is to set a public hearing on April 17th of 2017 to adopt a resolution adopting the 2016 Missoula Long Range Transportation Plan titled Activate Missoula 2045, which is an issue plan. And finally, number 8 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the Forest Health Protection Western Bark Beetle Grant Sub-Award and agreement with Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, affectionately known as the DNRC, for a sum of $67,450.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Questions or comments from council members on any of the consent agenda items? Ms. Sweeney?
I just wanted to, I wasn't at the committee meetings on Wednesday, and I just wanted to comment in regards to our number 3, divesting from Wells Fargo. I wanted to, first of all, thank my fellow council member Heidi for working to develop the resolution, and I also wanted to thank all my fellow council members for the discussion and for also helping to move this forward, as well as Lee Griffing for the work that she did in regards to making sure that everything was following appropriate procedures. And I know that we had received a lot of comment from the public in person as well as through email, and I just wanted to acknowledge that and personally acknowledge our water protectors who stood against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Thank you.
Further discussion, questions? All right, seeing none. Anyone in the audience care to comment on any of the items on the consent agenda this evening?
Candy Matthew Jenkins. I'm going to ask a special favor of council, and when you're making these checks out for the water acquisition, could you be more transparent in the agenda so when somebody walks into this building, they can understand where this money is going? Because I find the lack of transparency on the face of our agenda appalling.
Bob Moore. She's got a good point, but I got a better point. The better point is, why are we spending $201,000 on the water acquisition this late in the game? Why are we spending that?
Anyone else on any of the items on the consent agenda this evening? Sir.
My name is Joseph Grady, Missoula County. I want to thank the council this evening for considering divesting in Wells Fargo. It is a critical issue that faces Montana aside from just North Dakota. The headwaters of 3 major rivers begin here in the state of Montana, leading to both coasts and the Gulf. We are the front line of the headwaters of the United States. Those banking entities that have operated in North Dakota have their eyes on our state. We move forward to fight the XL Keystone Pipeline here in our own Montana to protect our own waters. We encourage you to look into those banking practices as well. Continuing on a statement that was made before by one of my colleagues, is that this is a responsibility for all of us. Aside from just our states, our cities as well. And so moving forward, a statement like divestment is a huge message to corporations, to banking entities, to financial institutions that believe that they own Montana over Montana state residents. In particular, our tribal nations historically have gone unrecognized, unacknowledged, disrespected, and ignored in terms of these entities. And so again, your message to divest says to every single one of our tribal nations in the state of Montana that we are here for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grady. So, folks, we don't applaud here because it occasionally tends to intimidate, so I appreciate your enthusiasm, but if you would refrain from applauding, I would be grateful for that. Anyone else care to comment on the consent agenda this evening? Sir.
Hello, my name is Matthew Bell, 322 David Court. I would also like to stand in support of our divestment from Wells Fargo as an institution. I believe it would be a good message as well. I also believe it's the appropriate thing to do moving into the future, making sure that the institutions that we have enabled to be quote-unquote too big to fail receive that enablement from our investment in them, and that there are better institutions and better ways, things that serve Montana better. It would be a good statement to make, especially considering how precious our water is, how our issues are connected, and that Montana greatly depends on its water, not only for its tourism industry, but its agriculture industry as well. And to put those at risk, I think would be very fundamentally flawed. Montana has only been a state for about 130 years now. It would be great to know that we could look forward for at least 130 more without fear that our water systems or that our economic systems are not focused on Montana's people and places and land. So I thank you for this resolution, and again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Anyone else on the consent agenda this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Lauren Pinsky, 807 Patty Creek Drive. You guys have spent a great deal of time and energy and money trying to preserve our water, trying to protect our water. You're doing a great job. Taking over mountain water is essential for our community. I think divesting our funds from Wells Fargo is saying the same type of thing. We're standing in solidarity with other people who are trying to protect their water supply. So I encourage you to vote to divest our funds from Wells Fargo. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. Anyone else this evening? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Eileen McGardner, 701 Stevens. I'm a mom here in Missoula. I'm also a student at the university, and divesting is the next step, and there are more steps to take, and I just encourage us to continue moving forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Hi, good evening. Valerie Pyatt, 1201 South 6th Street West, number 205. Just here to express my support for divesting from Wells Fargo. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pyatt.
My name is Lily Elison, 6630 Siesta Drive. Over 50 years ago, both my mother's and my father's parents built their homes in the Missoula Valley. Since then, we've had the great privilege of calling this place home. And no matter where I go, I will always come back here, to the rivers and mountains of Montana. This city is unique in that we have a sense of camaraderie and sanctuary here. And I want to see the Garden City bloom in adversity especially in our changing world. And to achieve this, our community must think about its fellow citizens and the environment that we all inhabit before profit. In 2013, Pope Francis wrote in a statement on the current state of society that the worship of the ancient golden calf has returned in a new, ruthless genus in the idolatry of money and the dictatorship of an impersonal economy, lacking the true human purpose. The worldwide crisis affecting finance and the economy lays bare their imbalances, and above all, their lack of real concern for human beings. Man is reduced to one of his needs alone, consumption. It is in the interest of all Missoulians to increase social capital through responsible investments in our local economy. The divestment of municipal funds from out-of-state corporations such as Wells Fargo is a monumental step in improving the economic status of local business owners and individuals throughout the city by increasing the circulation of wealth within our community rather than the consolidation of wealth on a global scale. We must combat social and economic exclusion and recirculate value within communities through reinvesting in our local markets. And I want to thank each and every one of you for even considering to divest. It's a huge step and extremely progressive. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else this evening? Sir?
Hey, my name is Nick Triolo, 130 Kensington. Quick story. Went to Standing Rock back in September, persuaded my roommate to come with me. He's a registered nurse, and he said, yeah, I'll come for a week. And the reason why I look tired right now is because he just got back last week. He's been there. He was there for 6 months. And he spent 6 months in the medical tent working at Standing Rock. He lost his job, he lost his girlfriend, he lost his housing here because he committed fully to standing in solidarity at Standing Rock. And I stayed up till 3 in the morning talking with him about his experience. He cried. He cried because of the violence that that was perpetrated upon him and upon his other folks he worked alongside. He was first to respond to the lady whose arm was nearly blown off by a concussion grenade. He was assaulted by police officers. He was attacked by the system and by that particular project. Saw it in his face, saw it in his eyes. I hold a Master's of Science here from the University of Montana in Environmental Studies, and I've never seen anybody so affected and traumatized as if he would just come back from war. But also his heart full and beating from the love and from the solidarity that he experienced out there. The alternative system of resisting a dominant narrative of violence that is the Dakota Access Pipeline. And I really respect and honor you all for considering divesting from Wells Fargo. I think it's one of the best moves I've ever seen a city government make, and I really encourage you to seriously consider this. This is a real thing. It's not some abstract thing. It's absolutely real, and it's affecting people right and left. So thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this evening? All right. With that, you don't get extra credit for waiting.
My name is Caitlin Pizercia. I live at 516 North Avenue East.
Hit us with your last name, please, Caitlin.
Pizercia. It's Pisercia.
Thank you.
I've been part of a campaign to divest the University of Montana from the top 200 fossil fuel companies in order of carbon reserves for over 3 years. And I've become increasingly involved with the national student divestment movement. And I've done that because I know that climate is one of the biggest injustices we're facing worldwide, and also because I've heard a lot of stories of the fossil fuel industry directly harming communities. I've also become so interested and so involved in it because I know that divestment has been an important and effective and powerful tactic in recent history, and it's possible to use divestment to reassess power dynamics that are out of balance and revoking the social license for businesses or governments that are pursuing destructive or violent practices against the public good. I'm here to advocate, maybe obviously, that the city pass this resolution and join the other cities and institutions who've divested from Wells Fargo. In this case, the movement to divest from Wells Fargo is growing. Missoula can be a leader, and it's significant that we do what we can to influence this issue. The Standing Rock Sioux have awakened a lot of people around the world to the Dakota Access Pipeline, and to the issue of tribal sovereignty, to the issue of protecting our water, to the issue of climate, to the issue of just not just blindly accepting the status quo and the way things are. And so now that we've become aware of this issue, I think there's some responsibility that comes with that to take the next logical step. And divestment is simple, it's powerful, and it's a way to join together and say that, you know, we're not going to support, we're going to have some standards. We're not going to support businesses that are unreflectively financing pipelines that are illegal and that are violent and hurting people. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Danielle Breck, 235 Livingston, here in Missoula. I would like to start by thanking all of you who have worked to draft this divestment plan and those of you who have considered it. It is of the utmost importance that we do this, that we divest from Wells Fargo, but it's also super important that we don't stop there. It's a wonderful thing to do, but there are other financial entities who have invested highly in this project, as well as other dangerous fossil fuel projects around the country. And in light of new knowledge I found out tonight, I encourage the council to hearken the public records request of a full list of investments from the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Kathleen Todd, 500 East Kent Avenue. I just want to thank you all for being so patient and gracious with your city and hearing what everyone has to say. I know that the involvement has been, I think, probably pretty high lately. Folks have been wanting to come in and talk with you guys about your decisions and how you affect the city and all the wonderful things you're doing. And when it comes to divesting from Wells Fargo, I would highly encourage that you don't reinvest in other financial institutions. Just to echo kind of what Danny said, there's other international banks and banks that are all over the country that, you know, might seem easier to use. It sounds like you're making a lot of out-of-state purchases, but I think working with a local financial institution would be very beneficial, and just keep everything in the local economy. And so I encourage you to divest from Wells Fargo and also reinvest in a local financial institution like Missoula Federal Credit Union. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Sir.
Hello, Will Adams, 817 Monroe Street. I'm just here to support the referendum to divest as well, and as many people have said, push it further than just Wells Fargo. That, you know, I'm sure that the reason why we're divesting will be discussed in the referendum, but if it's because of social injustice put forth by, you know, handed down through these institutions, that we look into all of our institutions that perpetrate social injustice, environmental injustice, and yes, and also possibly if the city council would be interested in putting a statement against the Keystone pipeline coming in, which is directly pollute the headwaters. And yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this evening? All right, no fooling this time. All right. With that, we have had public comment. We'll have a roll call vote.
On the consent agenda, items 1 through 8, Armstrong. Yes. Armstrong votes yes. Bentley. Bentley votes yes. Cares. Cares votes yes. DeBari. DeBari votes yes. Heddle. Heddle votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Marler. Marler votes yes. Swaney. Swaney votes yes. Van Losberg. Van Losberg votes yes. West. West votes yes. And Wilkins. Wilkins votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes.
And the consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum. We do have a report from the community forum this evening. Mr. Walton.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, I'm Jack Walton. I live at 5050 Jeff Drive in the Miller Creek neighborhood, and I'm here to give the community forum report. We had 3 presentations. One presentation was about the update on the library design and how that was going. And there were some questions and information was given, and we found out that they're only limiting parking to 80 spots, and so that was a question asked about how come they didn't consider more parking. But again, you know, with transportation plan, walking, biking, buses, and things like that. So, and then the library is going to be designed with sustainable building materials. It'll be LEEDs design, and it has a 100-year life. Sustainable building materials. They have raised between $2 and $3 million of the $5 million from private match. Then we had a presentation on the future of traffic signal boxes. As you know, as you drive down the street, you see these traffic signal boxes that are painted, and there are some that are being replaced by the State of Montana Department of Transportation. They're new boxes, and so there's anywhere from 5 to 9 that are not painted, and so the Art Council is working with artists to come up and paint those and beautify the city. And the other presentation we had was downtown apartment complex by Robin O'Day Farron Realty Partners, and talked about the proposal for the apartment complex, student housing, being close to downtown, but also fairly close to the university. It'll be across the street from the library on Front Street. And they're looking at individual units up to about 500. And down on the ground floor will be 6,000 square feet of small shops and things like that. Pizzerias, delis, combination of things where the students can go. And then they have a common area where they can gather, a study area. They have put together a very comprehensive design. And then also the community forum reallocated some funds request in the tune of $2,800. There was a grant that needed some additional funding, so we approved that. And then a couple of things we had, we talked about a cleanup day within the neighborhoods, and it was kind of left up to each neighborhood to set their own and work with their neighborhood leadership to come up with a cleanup day. And so with that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. Pardon me. We will move on to the special presentation portion of our agenda. We have two proclamations this evening. We'll begin with one. Whereas Missoula is an internationally minded community, and the Garden City has had a long history of facilitating, fostering, and celebrating a multitude of international organizations, activities, and events. And whereas the University of Montana has more than 400 international students, faculty, researchers, and staff members from more than 60 different countries, and whereas UM's Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center is dedicated to enhancing mutual understanding between the United States and Asia and to fostering ethical public policy and leadership. And whereas the Montana World Trade Center program strengthens Montana businesses through international trade, and the Montana World Affairs Council enables Montanans to appreciate the relationship of foreign policy and international issues. And whereas Missoula is home to the Missoula International Friendship Program, a nonprofit volunteer-based organization promoting global awareness and friendship between UM's international students and the greater Missoula community. And whereas the state of Montana and Kumamoto Prefecture in Japan have sister state relationships, and Missoula has two international sister cities, one in Palmerston, North New Zealand, and one in Neckargemünd, Germany. Now, therefore, I, John Engen, Mayor of the City of Missoula, in the state of Montana, hereby recognize the week of April 3rd through 7th as International Week here in Missoula. And Dr. Fluke is here. Udo, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's happening for International Week while you're here?
Sure.
If you'd come to the microphone, please.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor Engen, for declaring this week International Week. We had our kickoff today at the university, and we had a great start. We have a group of Humphrey Fellows that just arrived a couple days ago from different countries, very diverse group of scholars that were there this morning, along with international students and lots of faculty members that have researched abroad, studied abroad, taught abroad. And so it was a very nice start into the week. There are events and activities all through the week. Tomorrow is a presentation from a brown bag from 12 to 1. On Wednesday, we have a film premiere of a movie in the University Theater in the evening at 8 o'clock. On Thursday, there is a cooking event at the Good Food Store, an Indian from India cooking event, because this also connects to India Week and activities. And on Friday, we have various activities for students, ranging from mini language lessons, where if you were always curious about another language, you could just come for 10-15 minutes and hear some useful and interesting and fun phrases in another language, and then hopefully after that decide to study the language yourself. There will be languages such as German. I will do a small presentation of 10 minutes, but we'll have Chinese and lots of other Urdu and lots of other languages. There will be an international music contest for students, and then all coming together on Friday evening at an international banquet dinner to close off the International Week.
Fantastic. Thank you. For the record, Dr. Udo Fluke, arranging all of this at the University of Montana.
Well,
thanks, Udo.
Thank you, sir, and thank all of you.
Pleasure. Our second proclamation this evening is a joint proclamation from Missoula County and the City of Missoula. And whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challenges, and whereas the nation's counties and cities are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet their needs, and whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our communities, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century and supporting veterans and military families, to providing health services and helping communities recover from natural disasters. And whereas national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being, and whereas national service participants increase the impact of the organizations they serve, both through their direct service and by managing millions of additional volunteers, and whereas national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayer dollars, and whereas national service participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors, and whereas the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with county officials and mayors nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and mayors and county officials across the country for the Mayor and County Recognition Day for National Service on April 4th, 2017. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, Gene Curtis, Nicole Rowley, and David Strohmeyer, Missoula County Commissioners, and John Ingen, Mayor, do hereby proclaim April 4th, 2017 as National Service Recognition Day and encourage residents to recognize the positive impact of national service in our county and to thank those who serve and to find a way to give back to their communities. This is signed by me and Commissioners Curtis, Rowley, and Strohmeyer, and we have some folks here who are engaged in that service this evening, and thank you for being here. We did want to take a photo, as I recall, and your standard for that is very low, apparently, so I will step up. We'll do a photo, and I want to acknowledge in particular the senior corps, the folks who are making a difference throughout the community, and the folks who show up for AmeriCorps, who I have the privilege of meeting every year, spending a little time with. You guys do fantastic work, and I'm grateful to you as well. I'm also grateful for the fact that you do it for peanuts. So when you're done here, you can come work for municipal government for peanuts, and we'll make sure that you have rewarding careers. So thank you again. We'll do a quick picture, and then we'll move on through our agenda. Council members who want to join you for the vote.
I'm coming.
Where do you want to be?
Come on over that way. There's room for everybody.
If you can get Jim Nugent in the picture, that's the best thing.
Scoot.
Do you want to be in the photo?
Yes, I would.
Okay, all right.
If you could
Yeah.
take it, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, slow. I got a couple, just in case. Yeah.
Thanks, guys, very much. Great to see you. Thank you. That'll be your free parking on weekends. Oh, you're welcome. All right, thank you for your patience. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll move on through our agenda. I will pass on communications from the mayor this evening. We'll begin general comments from council members with Ms. Swaney.
I just wanted to April is Autism Awareness Month, and this Friday is Autism Acceptance Celebration, part of First Friday at the MSO Hub at 5 p.m. And then also on Saturday, the Missoula Urban Indian Health Center will have a wellness fair at the Payne Native American Center from 10 until 2. They'll be doing hemoglobin, cholesterol, bone density screenings, blood pressure, and immunizations. They'll also have hands-on activities a youth garden activity table, youth obstacle course, and youth native games. And then lastly, the last thing I wanted to mention was on Friday, the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes will have their quarterly tribal council meeting, and at 10:45 they will have a silent protest of the crime of, let me see, sexual assault. And 1 in 6 women will be a victim of sexual assault in her lifetime, and Native women are 2.5 times more likely to experience rape in their lifetime. Some of these statistics we had already heard during our Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's Day. This is a kickoff to Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and that's all. Thank you.
Ms. Bentley?
Excuse me, I just wanted to say in response to some comments earlier that were, I thought, bordering on personal attacks to Mr. von Lossberg, that I thought that Mr. von Lossberg's leadership during the gun ordinance was courageous and forthright and honest, and I appreciate him.
Ms. West?
I also wanted to comment on the whole process of the gun ordinance, and I don't think it's never a waste of time for citizens to be involved in this process, even if maybe a law is expected to be struck down. I think we have a system of checks and balances between those that create policy and our judicial system, and it's an evolving process, and we don't exactly know how things are going to turn in, and everybody should have a chance to be heard, and that should be valued.
Ms. Jones?
Thanks for those great comments, guys. And on a completely different note, I wanted to congratulate the Missoula Bruin hockey team, the high school hockey team that went to nationals in Division II hockey and played for the championship against Frisco, Texas. They lost this morning against the Texas team, but they came in second in the entire United States. So congratulations to them. And the hockey team of these high school boys is made up of 5 schools: Hellgate, Sentinel, Big Sky, Valley Christian, and Powell County, I guess, Deer Lodge, and also 1 home school. So congratulations.
Mr. Hess? Ms. Cares?
I wanted to speak also in support of national service. As a 2-year AmeriCorps member alum, I very much understand the value both for those who are serving and the organizations that they assist, and wanted to take the time to mention that this is one of many programs on the chopping block at a federal level. We know in Missoula that there is a large return on investment for this program in our community, and those of you who appreciate the services that folks in our community receive should take the time to speak in support of this program to our federal representatives. Thank you.
And Mr. Wilkins. Ms. Armstrong.
So I wanted to respond to the gentleman in the audience that was asking for a list of bank accounts. Our agenda is listed before each meeting online, and each of the items has accompanying documents in detail. And if you'll go to item number 6 under our consent agenda, it actually lists all of our accounts as we're updating the signer, so that might help you. And for the folks in the audience that said our agenda is not transparent, we can't possibly print every single document available for the audience members, but they are all available online, and you can most of the questions that are posed to us can be answered by going through those documents. So if you have a moment to go through the agenda online, I think that would help you.
Ms. Marler? Mr. DeBari?
So I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Ms. Armstrong was saying. Mr. Moore had asked a question about the expenses related to the water, and the vast majority of those expenses were associated with software that Mountain Water uses and that the city will be purchasing in order to keep track of customers and billing and all that stuff. So that's what the vast majority of that expense was for. And I also concur with my colleagues that I appreciate the deliberative legislative process, and I think it's of value to have a discussion a community-wide discussion about issues that are important to members of the community. So I valued my experience and hearing from others regarding the background check ordinance and stand by my participation and my vote.
Ms. Hedall and Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. Mr. DeBari covered, I was going to give an explanation of the water charges. Kenny, you had requested that, but he's covered that. And I just wanted to thank my colleagues, Dr. Swaney and Ms. West, for their work on the divestment resolution. It was a really well-written resolution, so thanks for your work on that.
With that, we will move on to committee reports. Items here weren't approved unanimously in council committees, and the chairperson of the standing committee will make a motion reflecting that committee's action. We'll invite comment on those items. We have but one committee report this evening, which requires me to turn a page, and it happens in Public Works.
Thank you,
Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mayor Engen. I move the council adopt a resolution closing and vacating public rights-of-way being portions of North Avenue and Holborn Street located in Union Edition Blocks 40 and 41 and Homevale Edition Block 17, Exhibit A, subject to 2 conditions of approval. That's Section 28, Township 13 North, Range 19 West, Principal Meridian, Montana. And I'd like to speak to the motion.
Mr. Hess?
I'm making an affirmative motion for ease of deliberating tonight. So a yes vote would be to close and vacate the right-of-way. But I want to make note that the committee recommendation on a 4-3 vote was a no vote, a denial. But just as I said, for ease, I'm making the affirmative motion. I do, though, with the full body, I do encourage everyone to support this resolution. I don't take right-of-way vacations lightly, and I know that none of you do either. But I'm suggesting that we proceed because, on balance, I think that this is that securing the sidewalk easement and vacating the right-of-way of North and Holborn Streets provides more public good than continuing to retain the right-of-way. This project has been the result of greater than, in my understanding, more than a decade of on and off work for between MRA and a relatively or a very reluctant landowner. It achieves pedestrian connectivity along Brook Street, a critical missing link on Brook Street, as we've seen in graphics throughout this process. It improves safety and visibility by removing a portion of a dilapidated building that impedes visibility coming onto Brook Street, and it releases a portion of city right-of-way that is not strategic or productive for us to retain. This right-of-way vacation increases the taxable value or increases the area of the taxable area of the Holiday Village parcels, and it enables a more creative approach to street design in the future that would not be possible without the additional space. So we've had a good discussion. There's been a lot of good points raised on either side of this issue throughout the process, but I think on balance, now is our opportunity to seize this additional right-of-way or this additional space for a sidewalk easement and move forward with improvements along Brook Street.
And that motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Ms. Jones?
I'd like to echo what Jordan said. I'm also in support of this. This is in Ward 3, and I've known of this situation involving the lack of sidewalks and this triangular building that blocks the visibility as one tries to access onto Brooks from Holborn. I've known it for decades, and it's been simply a bad situation. I'm not going to repeat the points that Jordan made, but a couple of other things. We discussed in detail the possibility of a transit easement, and Mountain Line came in. They answered many questions regarding that, and I'm satisfied at this point that even though this was designated as a hub in the Midtown Corridor plan, a transit easement would probably never be put in there, and in fact, we've got some options on Brooks to create a transit easement, which would work better. So I'm fine with that. And there was discussion of this being a mega block, and in the long run, would it be better planning on behalf of the city to keep these streets, keep these right-of-ways, and eventually connect through the blocks? But I don't see that ever happening, and frankly, it's a different situation than the mall, which is much, much bigger than this large block, and we just don't have a connectivity issue here. We have streets surrounding this mega block which provide more than enough connectivity. So instead of seeing these streets remain as is, basically access to this shopping center for the next 50 years, I'd like to use it to create a much better situation with sidewalks and eliminating the dangerous triangular buildings. So I hope people vote for this tonight. Thanks.
Mr. Von Lossberg on the motion.
Thanks. Some of these comments will be duplicative, but I want to just go back. This has been a tough one. I think a lot of people on council have wrestled with this. I certainly have, and I came to council, I believe it was last week when we had this, maybe it was the week before, lost track, having supported the public hearing, but then actually being prepared to vote against it. And you know, we got some additional information at the council meeting that night during the public hearing relative to how this would improve the visibility issue around the corner of that building, particularly relative to traffic that's coming up Brooks. And that was a pretty big deal. And I had some constituent comments who had or constituents who had commented on that particular safety issue, and that was a key thing. I wish we had heard that information, frankly, and I think that should have been prepared and presented the first time we heard it in committee, but I'm glad that it finally did come up at council. When we set the public hearing back, when we first heard this, you know, there were some comments from people about the vision in this corridor, and maybe we weren't getting enough width on the sidewalks, and I really appreciated those concerns and challenged some of those people to articulate that. And I think we had a really robust discussion exploring some of the alternatives there. The discussion relative to transit alternatives has been discussed. And I'm glad we took the time to explore that. But I've come away from that whole discussion with a better appreciation of what we might be able to do relative to the street in that area, and how the 9 feet of sidewalk might be more valuable than I was even considering it when we first had it in committee. I've already talked about the way this improves that site issue around that corner. I would challenge all of us to, you know, I'm concerned if we don't approve it that something has to happen there, because I feel it's a pretty dangerous situation around that corner. Lastly, you know, this has also been tough because the negotiating party, it's been tough to kind of see through to, you know, where we're working for the community's interest here. And there's been some sense that that's not as important to maybe everyone as we would want to see in the negotiation. So I think it's our job to get past that and put that aside and look at what's there. And so I'm going to support this. And I lastly wanted to just thank, we received some really good public comment on this, and there is a high bar for right-of-way vacations. I think this gets there. Maybe it's barely, but I also want to acknowledge the public comment we got on this. I am going to support the motion.
Ms. Armstrong?
I can sympathize with all the different conditions that we've looked at that make this beneficial, and with the frankly decades-long agony the MRA has gone through to try and get this particular negotiation, but this is not something I can support. We're giving away commercially viable and profitable land to a landowner that has been less than a great neighbor, and we are still having to pay to build the sidewalk in addition to that. And I feel like it's a bit of a lopsided deal, and the development that's gone on there has really been reskinning of that center, and I feel sure that in the near future that developer will do something that will trigger our existing development requirements to build out the infrastructure on that lot at some point. I just feel like we're being held over a barrel, so I just can't support this.
Ms. Bentley?
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate Ms. Armstrong's comments. I'm going to support it. I understand the sentiments on both sides, but in the end, on balance, I come down on wanting the sidewalk and thinking that this is the way that is the least painful way to get a sidewalk there. And all the other avenues to getting a sidewalk there are expensive and possibly painful. So I'm going to support it. don't feel awesome about it. It's not the best deal we've ever had before us, but it's a yes or no vote, and so I'm going to vote yes.
Mr. DeBari?
I appreciate Mr. von Lossberg's comments. He sums up some of my sentiment about this. As most of you know, I've been skeptical of this application since I first learned about it, and I am still skeptical of it. I think it should be a difficult thing for folks to come in and ask for right-of-way, because it is something that we hold in trust for the entire community, and I think that it's important to have folks who are asking for that privilege to have that right-of-way for their own use, to be community-spirited and to do a good job of describing what the benefit is for the entire community as they're making that proposal. And I think it took a while, as Mr. von Lossberg said, to get there. I think we've seen that, especially regarding the site distance issue, that this will help quite a bit. I've struggled with this for a long time. I see it from both sides, and even though I've been against this thing, I am going to support it very reluctantly, because I do want to see that sidewalk, and I do want to make sure that as we work along Brook Street, there is an opportunity to be more creative in how we address the street design and development along that street. So I guess that's it. Thanks.
Mr. Wilkins?
So actually Wednesday I voted against it, but I've been going back and forth on this myself in my mind. When I look at that right away, I'm not sure how important that is to the city. I don't think we'll ever do anything with that right away. My biggest fear is that the people that own Holiday will maybe someday build on that right away. Then I'll feel like I gave something away I shouldn't have gave. But getting that sidewalk along there, just a 9 foot, I'd like to get a little bit more, but understand they won't negotiate with us. So I'm going to go ahead and support this.
Ms. West?
I thought there'd be a couple more people ahead of me still. I'm not ready. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm not going to support this. I understand wanting the connectivity along the Brooks corridor, but I don't think that the amount of access and potential connectivity we're giving up is a fair trade. And I also think that, especially with the sight lines, and I go to Joann's a lot, so I understand the difficulty in getting out of there and feeling safe, but I really feel like developers in our community should value the safety of their customers, and if their driveway isn't safe, they should make sure it is. And I think that alone isn't enough for me to give up the streets.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, anyone in the audience care to comment?
Couple of points, Bob Moore. Couple of points. I'm so happy to hear Ms. Armstrong and Ms. whoever you are to just automatically, if somebody comes asking for money or a favor or right of way or whatever it is, this city council gives it to them. Do you ever sit down and think about, well, maybe we don't have to give everything to everybody who comes and asks? I actually happened to be going, I think it was at CVS or something, and I saw that. And you say you've been trying to get a driveway or sidewalks there for a dozen years or whatever it was. That in itself tells you it's not needed. You're going to try to have a beautiful sidewalk beside of a major street in Missoula, like this sidewalk faces or is beside of. But you're right. This is not an even fair trade. It's just like I was told that the park close to the mall, or it's not a park yet, but it's a big piece of land, was worth $9 million. $9 million. I've never seen the appraisal that says that. And you're going to pay what, $2 million? Why aren't you taking the $2 million, selling it for $9 million, if you believe any of that stuff that's coming from Montana Rail Link, and give it there? Of course, it's close to the shopping center, so that automatically makes it a give me. But it is good to see that at least two councilors at least addressing the consideration of we don't have to give everything away to developers, businessmen, and friends. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? Mr. McMillan.
Mark McMillan, Ward 6. This was one of the things that actually brought me down here tonight. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be down here at all. But yeah, I had a few questions. Can people answer it? Because I'm usually not into giving things to any private entities. But in asking three people over there, because I actually work on some of those buildings over there and in that remodel, I asked three people essentially if they knew what street this was, and everybody thought it was a parking lot or didn't think it was a street or thought it was just a driving lane in a parking lot. My question would be, who's plowing that? Is it the private company or the city? And how long have they been doing it? You know, the city's not maintaining any curbs, paint, pavement over there right now, I'm assuming. City, there's no street signs over there, which is, I think, why most people are confused. So, you know, would we have to put up signs in the end? And it's just, what are the costs of us keeping it over the end? We're being held to our feet to the fire to get sidewalk, but is there any leverage on their part to have the city then invest in a bunch of sidewalk and curb or walkways over there, because those are technically streets? And then I wonder how much more money is going to come in on, what is it, 25 to 30,000 square feet worth of commercial space property taxes. Does anybody have a number for what that would bring in if we did trade it, and how that could be applied, and what percentage it would cover of building that sidewalk along Brooks? Is anybody able to respond in this now, or is it just comment? So yeah, I've worked there plenty of times to pretty much avoid Holborn because it's an accident waiting to happen. So it is a tough call, but I just wonder if anybody's thought about that, because it almost seems like the city abandoned it a long time ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. Anyone else this evening? All right. With that, barring any further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, this is on the motion to adopt the resolution to close and vacate. Bentley. Yes. Bentley votes yes. Cares? No. Cares votes no. DeBari? Yes. DeBari votes yes. Heddle? Yes. Heddle votes yes. Hess? Yes. Hess votes yes. Jones? Jones votes yes. Marler? No. Marler votes no. Swaney? Yes. Swaney votes yes. Von Lossberg? Von Lossberg votes yes. West? No. West votes no. Wilkins? Yes. Wilkins votes yes. And Armstrong? Armstrong votes no. Would any of you like to change your vote? I have 8 ayes and 4 nays.
And the motion is approved. With that, we will move on, ladies and gentlemen, to new business. We have but one item, and that is our legislative update. Anyone have any interest in commenting on that report or suggesting anything for our lobbyist? All right. With that, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Armstrong?
So it looks like the legislature, or the infrastructure bill is coming back out. They've not rescheduled it. They need a 2/3 vote to pass the $78 million for infrastructure. Mayor, it's HB 645. So I don't know if we're still tracking that. Okay, thank you.
We are. Anyone else? All right. With that, are there any additional items to be referred? Seeing none, any miscellaneous communications, reports, petitions, or announcements? Seeing none of those, as always, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your service, and we will be adjourned.